Hello, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are. I see some really super familiar faces like Jane, Desiree, Carolina, Eliane, Samantha. Good evening and welcome, everybody. And if you're also streaming from Facebook, welcome. And if you're part of the CFC community as well, you are welcome. And as you all know, today's webinar is all about how to turn an idea into a reality. And we're just saying that this webinar is being recorded and is also being live streamed on Facebook as well. And for the topic, how can you turn an idea into a reality? Have you ever wondered how you could go from just those ideas and thoughts in your head to how you can actually overcome all the fears, get resources to actually start something out, or how not to be afraid of what people would say when you start out on a project? Well, that's what this topic is all about, how to turn an idea into a reality. And we have some really, really interesting young people who are joining us from South Africa, Romania, and from Nigeria as well. And to start first, I will have to introduce them. And the first person I'll be introducing is James Okina, who is from Nigeria. And James also is a child rights advocate and an educator. And he founded Street Priests Incorporated, which is an organization or a foundation that has impacted over 6,000 young street children on the streets of Nigeria and in Calabar as well. And James has been recognized as a global team leader, a Future African Leader recipient, a 2018 Global Change Maker by Global Change Makers in Switzerland. And he's also been featured on NPR, BBC, and Forbes, and so many other amazing places. And the next person we'll be talking to today is Nicoletta Prostian. And Nicoletta is also the head of business development in a deep tech startup known as Neurolabs, where she and her team recently raised up to €1 million to work on their project's object recognition technology. And Nicoletta is also a CFC founding member, and she's also the founder of Homecomers. It's an organization in Romania that deals with a network of professionals who would take what they've learned internationally and come back to their country in Romania to teach people what they've learned. And last but not the least, one of the people we'll be talking to today is 19-year-old Amonge Singoto. And Amonge is from South Africa. She's a youth activist, a social entrepreneur, and also the founder of Blackboard Africa. And it's pretty much amazing. I just found out that Amonge was featured by Beyonce yesterday, but she'll speak more about that very, very soon. So Amonge's work with Blackboard Africa is to change the narrative of the stereotypical one single story of Africa, and she wants young people's voices to come to the forefront, and she's doing that with some of her programs, such as the recent one known as Fan Her Flame. And she's being featured by TEDx, Google, Facebook, and so many other amazing places, amazing platforms. So these are three young people we'll be looking at today who would answer some of our most pressing questions on how we can turn our ideas into a reality. And to start first, I would just say that the process for this meeting is, first off, the speakers will get to introduce themselves and what they do very briefly, and then we'd have 30 minutes of asking them questions. And then the next 30 minutes would be where you come in and ask them your questions. And in order to ask them your questions, please be sure to use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. And you can add your full name and your country there if you're comfortable with that. And if you also want to ask the question anonymously, you can definitely do so. And all you need to do is to submit your question in a private message to the host, and the host will be sure to share your message. And one last thing, please prepare yourself to be really, what's the word? Prepare yourself to be amazed by what these young people are doing, and also prepare your questions as well for anything you want to ask them. And please also make sure your microphones are on mute. And now to start first, I'd simply like the speakers today, or our friends in quotes, to first off introduce themselves by, in 5 minutes, just tell us what the organization does, what kind of impacts they're trying to drive, and also what they've learned from their experience in the social sphere and social organization, community building. And the first person I'd like to speak is James Okina.
Well, thank you so much, Mirabel, for that warm introduction. Thank you so much, and welcome everyone. My name is James Okina, and I'm the founder of Street Priest Incorporated. The vision of Street Priest is very simple. We want to transform the lives of children on the streets and turn their potentials into assets for society. Now, I can, go in detail and talk about all that we do, but I'd just like to summarize it in this way, right? Our vision pretty much succinctly talk about our motivation and what encapsulates our entire work, drive, and motivation, and the impact this has on our community and society at large is multifaceted. On one hand, we have kids and human beings who could have been anything but something, get to contribute to society, add value to someone else's life, and have problem solved. Because I've found that the most remarkable problem solvers that I've personally met in my life are children on the streets. But more so, these are kids who could have been used for mayhem, get consumed in vices. And so we can have a more secure, more safe, and more peaceful uh, society. But something else I'd like to also talk about is the fact that even if these kids were not going to contribute directly into society, even if they were never going to do anything, and I can go on and tell you about all the things that we miss by not, investing and building a society that these kids should live in, the poems that will never be written, the songs that will never be sang, the solutions that will never be provided. But even if none of that ever happened, I want to live in a society that protects the rights of children on the streets. It was Nelson Mandela who said that you can tell a society by how it treats its children. And I want to live in a society that protects the rights of the most vulnerable. And in this context, it is children on the streets. And I had come to understand that they are not children, that their rights are not being denied because they are street children. They are street children because their rights have been denied already. And so that's what my organization does. That's the impact we have on our society. And what I've learned from this, or what drives me to impact my community, is very simple. I believe I am my community, and my community is me. I don't think it's a destination I'm trying to get to. It is just something I do. Like, I wake up every day and tidy my room. I want to do the same for my community, and I understand that my role in my community is very crucial. So that is what I do, why I do it, and the impact we have in our community. Thank you so much.
Wow, James, thank you. That's powerful. I am my community and my community is me. That's a brilliant way to show that you are in sync with the people around you. And the next person will be Nicoletta Prostian to also tell us about her organization and the impact they're trying to drive and why they do.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to see the Common Futures Conversations project growing, as also being a founding member myself. Thank you, Mirabel, for the introduction, and I would like to add some words about my story. I'm Nicoleta, 31, from Romania. I have studied in Germany and in Austria in the fields of informatics and economics. And after graduating, I started my career in the corporate world in Western Europe. But after almost 7 years living abroad, today I'm back home in my home country in Romania, working in a deep tech startup, as you mentioned, Mirabel. But for today's conversation, I believe it's more relevant to talk about my experience in community building and volunteering in social impact projects. And to give you some context, back then, when I moved to Germany, I joined the League of Romanian Students Abroad, and I took on the role to build up the German branch of this international organization. And the aim was to connect with young Romanians willing to study or already studying in Germany. And eventually, we wanted to enable a community of support throughout their study years in Germany. But more than that, during my master's studies at the University of Cologne, I also joined the so-called worldwide family of the Robert Bosch Foundation. And this was through the MOMET program for executives of tomorrow from Central and Eastern Europe. And in this context, I had the opportunity to be one of the pioneers of the Bosch Alumni Network. And so I acted as a regional coordinator for the Bosch Alumni Network in Romania and Moldova. So these are two examples of communities backed up by established organizations. But with homecomers, we started from writing down an idea together with my sister. 2 years ago, when I decided to move back home, I was enthusiastic about the potential of my home country, and I was willing to bring in new perspectives. And this was much to the contrary of millions of Romanians who have left the country, sadly, in the past 10 years. And then we soon found out there were many more friends and peers out there sharing the same perspective and willing to contribute to a better future for our home country. So what we did, we joined forces and started to work on a mission. And eventually we have grown homecomers as being a network of like-minded young Romanian professionals with international experience in education. And we are today 400 plus members in Romania and abroad. Our common mission is therefore to contribute back home while sharing and bridging knowledge and experiences. And how do we execute this? We organize conferences, social events, but also very important professional camps. Beyond that, we also develop this feeling of belonging to a community of practice. This means we support any new homecomer settling back home, either with their businesses, on their job searches, or even with social lives, because it's really difficult when you get back home. It's like migrating twice. And I know you asked about lessons learned. What I've learned from all these experiences I made in this field, I learned that communities are about networks and not about places. I also learned about the power of a group if you leave space for everyone to engage. So I believe this is actually the recipe with homecomers. Me and my sister as founders, we have given the high level direction, but together as a group, we facilitate the medium for our members to test out ideas, to find the resources and the experts needed to explore projects. And the aim is the positive development in local communities in our home country. So this being said, I'm really curious about opening up the discussion in the larger round. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicoletta. Indeed, communities are more about networks and not just places. And Amonge, can you tell us what Blackboard Africa is about and why you started that?
Hi everyone, my name is Amonge Sinato. So I just want to tell you a little bit about me before I really tell you about Blackboard Africa, but I am a second year student doing a Bachelor of Arts degree in International Relations and Politics. But I'm also a writer, I'm also a creative and a storyteller, and you know, all those other things Mirabelle said, activist, youth entrepreneur, and public speaker. But the work that I do, I founded an organization called Blackboard Africa. I think about 4 years ago now, and the work that we do, or sort of our MO, is around giving young people access to leadership training and mentorship. I think what we found is that there's so much untapped talent in the country and in the continent. And it's not necessarily that, you know, there aren't talent, there isn't talent, there aren't gifts, and there isn't something that, you know, we have to share with the world. It was more sort of an internal conflict around understanding the power of your voice and really valuing it and valuing, the power in your community, and taking that to the world. So I think that's what we really try to instill in young people, making sure that they're confident, they know how to use their voice. So there's the problem, dealing with the problem of continence, but then taking it a step further and actually giving them, tools to implement these solutions. I think young people are so important. Our minds work in a million different ways, and I think it's something that our society needs. These innovative, fresh, unconventional sort of mindsets, and I think we're working around harnessing that and making sure that our communities are benefiting from it. So we're making sure that they have those leadership tools. They know how to interact with other young people. They know how to take responsibility for different actions and for different projects in their lives. And in general, harnessing them towards transforming the community. So sort of our vision statement is cultivating youth talents towards a transformed society. And I think that kind of sums up exactly what we do and what we're really about. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you so much, James, Nicoletta, and Amonge. Thank you. It's you all have really powerful insights and really powerful reasons why you do the things that you do. And the next 10, 12, 13 minutes, we'll be opening up the ground to take questions from the audience. But then before we go into that, we have very specific questions to ask you guys, very specific, wonderful questions. And let me go back to James Okina, the founder of Street Priests. So James, I want to ask you why you started out what you started, but you've already mentioned that. And we start things out because of passion, right? But then when the passion ends, what keeps you going? Or what has kept you going outside of the passion that happened? So you can just start first by telling us briefly what sparked Street Priests. But I think you already mentioned that a little bit. But after that, you just say, you just let us know what kept you going when it felt like your passion died down a little bit.
Oh, thank you so much. That's a great question. First of all, what got me into caring for children on the streets is my own personal experience. When my parents separated at age 9, I turned down for a sense of belonging. And those were some of the darkest years of my life. I don't think any other period in my life rivals the hopelessness of that period. And when I was able to come out of that, I can remember just being consumed with wanting to do anything and everything that can, take me put as much distance between me and the life I just come out from. And so I got into entrepreneurship. I got into a number of things. But when I met a kid who reminded me of my younger self, and he was extremely talented, extremely intelligent, but was in very similar circumstances, dysfunctional home, was out of school, etc. I knew I wanted to do something for him. So I didn't start out with this remarkable idea, oh, I want to help, kids. I wanted to help that one kid. That was the one kid I wanted to help in whatever way I can. But it was just a friendship. I befriended him, and I wanted to help guide him. And I was motivated by two things. One was the fact that if I could come out of this, then he can. The second was, it's no fun seeing greatness where it doesn't belong. And because I could tell that this kid had substantial gifts and resources to give to the world, I did not want to see that go to waste. And I thought that would be it when I was done with him. But then there was another kid and another kid, and 6,000 kids later, we're still working. And the reason for this is, I don't think personally I could ever do enough. And so that was it. It wasn't like an epiphany that came to me. What motivated me wasn't an idea, it was just that one kid. And every day when I still hear the stories of our kids, when I look at their eyes, when I look at how far they've come, it's motivation to do even more. It's motivation to go even further. And so that's basically, for me, that's it. Like, it's, just having to, think about the world that I want to create for these kids and that I can enable them create as well. That's what keeps me going. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, James. From one kid to the second kid to the third kid to the 6,000th one. Wow, that's you need to tell us the secrets of how the structures and everything, because if you know James, where James is right now, James is currently in the United States studying, but then what's going on in Nigeria in James's foundation is something else. Like, it feels like, sometimes in an organization, the founder has to be there for things to move, but then James isn't in Nigeria, but things are massively moving in Nigeria with his, with his foundation, from feeding tons and tons and over 2,000 meals served during the lockdown period. James has been feeding stray kids in Nigeria, even when he's in the United States. So that's something we'll get into very soon. But for Amonge, how did it feel when you saw your name being, there's a recent hype right now with Beyonce's new album, and then as everyone is hyping the new album, Amonge, you also get hyped because your name appeared on Beyonce's website, so amongst the whole hype of, her new album, everybody said, Amonge got featured. So first of all, I want to ask, how did that feel for you? And also, what were some of, the challenges that you probably faced while starting out Blackboard Africa, that you've overcome these challenges and up to the stage that someone like Beyonce is mentioning you. So what challenges did you face, and how did you overcome that, just briefly?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, I mean, I think it's really incredible to sort of see the work that you're doing being recognized on incredible platforms. There's so many to name, but I think it's not necessarily about, about that for me personally. And that's been great. And I think it's spreading our message, it's spreading our sort of reach out to the world, which is absolutely incredible. But I think for me, it's really great to see how many people are inspired. I literally, so many people are reaching out to me saying, hey, I see, the work that you're doing, and, how you're sort of really working and you're transforming, sort of people's mindset in this space. And it's inspiring for me. And I think it's really powerful for young people to see someone who looks like them or is familiar, or somebody who's from their community in these spaces, because they also feel like, okay, I'm empowered, I can also take that transition into this next step. And then I think I always feel like I'm not just representing myself. Like, James said, I am my community is me. So, it's amazing to be in these spaces, but I'm also very aware that it's not just about me. I'm sort of carrying the flag for so many others. So it's an honor, really. And then just looking at some challenges, I guess. Okay, well, so let me tell you, when we started Blackboard Africa, I was 15 years old, and I genuinely did not sort of think that it would be at the space that it is now. It kind of started out of a frustration. We weren't feeling represented. We weren't feeling like our voices were being heard. And so we started this platform so young people can, sort of share their frustrations, share their experiences. And it was literally like an Instagram page and eventually like a blog. But I think as we started interacting with people more and more and understanding more and more what the community needed, we really had to transition, and we had to, transition ourselves into the space where we can service these issues. So that was, I will say, a really challenging thing. And I think it is something that, you know, we're still challenging, we're not challenging, we're still battling with, you know, to this day. It's not something that you necessarily arrive at. There's so much work that can be done. We have 1,000,001 ideas and 1,000,001 things that we want to do. But I think it's always just about translating. So the struggle essentially was sort of making that shift from a 3-man team, you know, blog situation into, you know, this functioning, living, breathing organization that is really bringing impact to young people in the country and hopefully one day the continent. So it's been a struggle, but I think I've just been reaching out to people in my network and people who can support me and just other people who I know who are making it work and doing it. Like, you know, like you mentioned, James, he's doing his thing and he's not even in the country. So, I mean, I admire people like that, and I look up to them and I reach out and say, okay, how did you do it? And let's compare notes, let's learn, let's help each other. So, yeah.
Thank you, Amongi. That's powerful. So to paraphrase what you've said, a lesson from you is collaboration is a kind of new competition, and your growth is a continuous phase. You continue going and going and going, and you don't get intimidated by what other people who are better are doing, but you rather want to communicate with them and see how they got where they got to and how you can compare notes and share ideas with them. I think that's a powerful mindset to have, and no wonder people like Beyonce just recognize you all the way from there to here. And now Nicoletta has a lot of experience with homecomers. When it comes to gathering people who have international experience and people who, you know, have lived in other countries, and when they're coming back to Romania, Nicoletta, you've been trying to get these people to share their knowledge with other Romanians. So what's a lesson that you have learned from, you know, trying to get people with international experience to share back or share it back, or share, how do they put it? But yeah, literally to share their knowledge back with people in the country. What's a striking lesson that you've learned from that networking experience?
Thank you, Mirabel. Yeah, good one. It's tricky enough because our mission actually depends a lot on external factors such as political situation and other factors in our home country, and this might be a blocker for anyone thinking of moving back home. But to mitigate this, we thought of changing somehow our approach and trying to enable anyone out there, any Romanian still living abroad, to be able to contribute back home. So it shouldn't be mandatory for someone to be physically back home to provide or to contribute with their own knowledge and experience they have gained internationally. I believe in essence it wasn't a challenge at all, because if you would ask anyone who has left the country and studied abroad and then also worked abroad, you will find all positive answers with regards of contributing back home, because there's this common wish that everyone wants a positive development back in their home countries, even though this is not in alignment with their personal plans of moving back home or not. I can also give you some examples on what we did. For example, in design thinking, we did organize a professional camp during a whole weekend, and there we met young people that haven't had the international experience, and our members already moved in Romania, but also some coming just for the event were the ones moderating and being the ones bridging the knowledge from west to east. I believe it's of great advantage, this diversity in terms of different specializations for our members or of our members, because we have people from education to culture, IT, or medicine. And therefore, this makes us somehow unique, the whole community, because then we can facilitate any kind of work groups on very different themes. So I believe in essence, I haven't met anyone who would say, okay, I would very much like to forget from where I come from. No, it's totally the opposite. And again, I would refer this to my very own and personal experience. I always thought about life being a trade-off between giving and taking. And if you have started here, because, for example, myself, I went to a school in Romania. So I have these origins, these roots here. So I believe I'm somehow responsible also for giving back home something and trying to enable this bridging between, yeah, the lucky ones that have had the opportunity to work and study abroad and those that haven't had it. I truly believe that anything related to education is going to be the best instrument in terms of developing and changing towards a better future for Eastern countries.
That's a perfect way to put it. Thank you, Nicoletta. Indeed, we cannot forget the road that leads us back home. And indeed, we have to help other people back with what we've all learned. And that's super great. Thank you so much, Nicoletta and James and Amonge, for sharing your experiences with us. And now to get into what people have for you, the questions people have for you. There are a couple of questions right now for our panelists today. And the first question, an anonymous question, I will read out, which any member of the panel can actually answer is, the first question is this. Now, young people are often underestimated and their youth is seen as a shortcoming. How have you turned it into a positive asset? Have you encountered any pushback because of your age? I think that's a perfect question because, I mean, every one of us are young people. So does anyone want to go first? James, Amonge?
Yeah, I can jump in on this one. No, look, I think that's definitely a reality that, you know, people aren't expecting for us to be doing these things and sort of in the spaces that we're in because we're young. That's always going to be the reality. And I think my biggest sort of difficulty with my age has just been that sort of prerequisite, okay, what are you doing here? Why are you in this space? But I think I've actually really found that people are so excited to see young people doing constructive things. So I think for me, that's really what I've played into. I can't remember a time where like I haven't been the youngest person in the room, and I think it's so cool. Like it's something that just sort of differentiates you, and just in general, I think definitely play to your strengths and play to your youth in general. I think sometimes even young people, we try to enter the space and then assimilate as if, you know, we're not young. And I think we need to embrace our youth. That is the thing that is needed in the room. It's needed at the table. It's needed in decision making and in policy changing. So I think there's so much that, you know, your youth is good for. And in every space that you're in, I think it's so important to lean into that, because I think there are a pool of people who are excited to see it.
Embrace your youth. That's powerful. Does Nicoletta or James any input?
Well, one of the reasons why personally I cringe when people say that I've done, like all of this is because I may seem to be the point person, but there's an entire army of young people who drives our work at the very grassroots level. And personally, I have always, faced, that, people look down on you because you're young, or young or youth means incompetent, careless, irresponsible. Um, I've always played into that in the sense that if I want to do something, I make it a statement to do it so well and so good that it will compete with anybody, and it wouldn't be brought up because a young person did this. And so let's celebrate this young person who did this. So I have personally made it a point that if I was going to do anything, um, if someone was, if someone had a problem with ageism, they'll probably not want to even talk about the fact that I'm young, because it was so excellent. And on the other hand, there are a lot of people who celebrate young people, and historically as well, whether it's the movements or the innovations, the companies that have changed the world, they were all started by young people. And so I think people can think about you in any way. You don't have any control over that, and I think you should just be confident and constantly seek to improve yourself and your work, consistently, because you're on your path and on your journey alone, regardless of whether you're young or you're old. You get older and you figure out that there's nothing that really changes. So if someone maybe discriminated you because of your age or your youth, it's okay. It's all right. It's okay. Next. So, thank you.
Awesome. I see that fire and spirit in you to always be the best wherever you are and compete, and not really compete, but to show yourself, James. You see that spirit in you. Nicoletta, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, sure. I could add some thoughts about the situation in Romania, meaning now that it's actually on the contrary to what my peers here have described about the situation in their home countries, because in the past years there have been many youth movements in Romania, and everyone bets all in for the youth to be the ones bringing in the change. So yeah, somehow I also do believe that the youth nowadays has the power to change things to the better, and it's a very good dynamic as I feel it back home.
Thank you, Nicoletta. Indeed, we have the power to change a lot, and we have 17 minutes to get into. We have just 17 minutes to get into some really, really super urgent questions from some amazing people. And now, Fundile Mafanga, a Swazi national and co-founder of the Agenda 2063 Academy, has a specific question for Amonge, and I would invite Fundile right now to turn on your mic and ask the question to Amonge.
Yes, I hope everyone can hear me okay. Yes, okay, great. First of all, thank you so much to the panelists and for the hosts for putting this together. It's always a pleasure, and I really think that we can really glean a lot of the insights from the panelists today, as young professionals or as just professionals ourselves. My first question goes to Amonge. Because I'm very familiar with Southern Africa, as you can imagine, being a neighbor, I am really inspired to say, I'm inspired by the fact that even at a young age, you were able to tell yourself that, or maybe allow yourself to be both a student as well as fulfill many roles, from activism to being an author to being almost a community leader, or a community leader. And so my question is really about, how did you allow yourself to just say, you know what, I'm going to take on these different roles? And yeah, that's my first question.
Oh wait, okay. Thank you so much, Fundile. That was a really great question. Look, I think there's a difference between purpose and passion. I think for right now, I can tell you that I think my purpose is amplifying and empowering youth voices and youth experiences. So I think, you know, my work that I do, my organization, that sort of speaks to that. That sort of speaks to my activism. That sort of speaks to, you know, my community leader role. But I'm passionate about so many things. And I think, you know, as people, we're so multifaceted. You know, we're not one dimensional. There's so many different things that I love and that I love to, you know, get involved in. So I'm passionate about writing, and, you know, I do a lot of that in my work. And I think I'm really fortunate in that I've been able to sort of weave a lot of my passions into the work that I do. But just in general, I think it's okay to love and want to do multiple things. I'll tell you an interesting thing about me is that my first choice to study at university was performing arts, believe it or not. So like, there's definitely, you know, we're multifaceted as people essentially. And I think you should allow yourself to pursue those different things. And I mean, I'm not pursuing them all at the same time, because I know that that's just like, it's a lot to handle. So, you know, I prioritize the different things that I want to do right now, what I think is so important. And then, you know, in my spare time, in, you know, any moment that I have, I dedicate that to my passions and doing the things that I love. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. We have like this, I know. Okay, wait, we have just a few more minutes, and I think the questions are even getting much more intense and super hot at this point. Like I'm a bit perplexed, and I really want to get the answers to this, but we have to rush it. And whoever is going to ask a question, please be swift about it, and whoever is going to answer the questions, please also be swift about it. But this is a very super important question that Hugo Barrel has from Madrid, and I really want to get the answer to this as well. So Hugo, can you please turn on your mic and ask this question?
Can everyone, like, I suppose you all agree with me that being surrounded with the right people at a young age is very important. And I would just like to hear your thoughts on how would you describe the kind of people you were surrounded by when you were embarking on your different projects? Or like, how do you make sure that you're surrounded by the right people, basically? Thank you.
I'd like to attempt this really quickly. For me, well, I've had very remarkable and very strategic people support me throughout my journey. But the focus for me has never been the people around me. In fact, there are times in my life where the closest people around me were against what I do. And that list includes, but is not limited to, my mom, my mentors, people who were very close and very influential to me, who, you know, kicked against what I wanted to do. I think in the pursuit of purpose, and for me personally, it's, you know, just constantly not looking for people, but just, you know, like staying focused on what I'm trying to do and just being confident that the people will come. So I did not make sure that I was surrounded by the right people. I just, you know, stayed on course. That's my answer to that question.
I hope that question has been answered, Hugo, and thank you so much, James, for answering that question. Now, very quickly, I need all the panelists to be ready for this one. It goes to all the panelists, and in just 1-2 words, this is an anonymous question from someone. What is one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess? What is one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess? And Nicoletta, 1 or 2 words, what's that characteristic?
I would definitely say first to be able to inspire others. Because otherwise you wouldn't get the right people to follow your vision.
Absolutely, it's important to be able to lead people right. Amonge?
I think it would be initiative for me. I think being a leader, means that you've got to go for it, and you've got to just have that go-getter attitude. So initiative.
And James.
I'd say listen. I think the quality of being able to listen to your community and the people around you or the people that you serve will save you a lot of mistakes.
That's powerful. Thank you so much, James. So from Nicoletta, you need to be able to inspire people to lead with you. James is all about listening. Amonge is all about taking responsibility and initiative. And wow, 10 more minutes to ask some really super awesome questions. So Akufuna Muyunda is is one of the CFC founding members, and he has a super awesome question because he likes what you guys are talking about and he wants to ask a question. So Akufuna, could you please turn on your mic and let's hear your question.
Well, thank you so much, Mirabel. I'm so glad to have joined this wonderful, opportunity to learn from the panelists. Interesting insights from all of you guys. It's brilliant and motivating and inspiring for some of us. And my question basically, I just want to have to hear your thoughts, and doesn't have to be perfect. On the when we talk about ideas into reality, of course, I think it is very important to have a clear understanding of what that reality should look like or looks like. And the first question that I have is, then who should define this reality? Is it for young people or by young people? And probably if we have that understanding, it will help us be able to, shape, the understanding from the perspective of wanting to create impact in the society, for a better society, for change that will impact many lives across the world. But of course, it is important to understand when we say reality, what does reality look like? Is it from an individualistic point of view, or from the community perspective, or from a global perspective? And I think that can help us really, shape the thoughts around the subject content at this particular, point. Thank you.
I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but I'll attempt to answer the question the way I understand it. When we say ideas into reality, I believe we're just saying bringing ideas into life, right? Now, the person who has the idea is the one who would, determine, like what that idea is personally, and of course how that fits into the problems you want to address in your community or the problems you want to address in the world. But primarily, it's not, I don't think, maybe it's just semantics, but the reality there is just bringing the idea to life. So you have your community lacks water, you have an idea to bring water to, into your community. That's it. You basically converting that idea you have in your head about how that should work and bringing it into life. So I think it might be the question may be asked in a different context in terms of what that reality look like, what does it look like? But that's my answer to the question. It's very simple, turning ideas and bringing them to life.
All right, thank you so much, James, for that. And we have just 6 minutes to round things up. I keep pointing at the time anyway. And now I'm just going to ask 2 more questions. And I think this is a super important one. And just briefly, Fundile has some really awesome questions that he's just popping.
Yes, hi again. Very quickly from me. And this is to all panelists. How do you build a great team and a good system that can also grow to help your communities?
I think this is a huge topic. So whoever is going to answer this, please put your topic in a thesis statement. Thank you.
So I think the proper answer is to say it takes time to build up anything. And in terms of communities, I believe the most valuable communities grow organically. Yeah, having the right people surrounding you because you share the same values, interests, and so on. This is then going to be I don't know, the secret sauce in keeping a community alive over the time. And then in terms of structuring, again, the founders, one founder or a group of founders are just the ones opening up the way, being the leaders, inspiring and setting the direction. But if you do not leave room for all the other members to engage, then you're not going to be successful, and this whole thing is not going to be sustainable.
That's true. Bringing in volunteer staff participation, that's very important. And James, you have a powerful team. Among you have a powerful team. Any one-liners you want to?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, surround yourself with like-minded people, like Nicoletta said, just like people who have the same sort of core values. I think that really, really is helpful and essential in making sure that, you know, you have a functioning organization and team. And then just looking at structure, I think it's really important to define what that means for yourself and for your organization. So, I mean, there's really no sort of manual, but I think it's worthwhile looking into other, you know, sort of projects that are in that area and seeing how they're working with it, and then take bits and pieces, and you know, you'll come along learnings on the way as well. So that would be my advice.
All right, thank you so much. And finally, the very last thing, I'm sorry if you asked your questions and it couldn't be answered. We'll get to that soon. But then finally, what piece of advice would you give to yourself 3 years ago, Nicoletta? Very briefly, what piece of advice would you give to yourself 3 years ago?
So the advice I would tell to myself 3 years ago was actually what I also did, executing on my idea and testing it out, reaching out to others, receiving some first feedback, and then trying to build on it. So whenever you feel like you have an idea, no matter of the reality, if it's on an individual scale or a larger scale, this referring to Akufuna's question, it's just up to executing. Because otherwise, as we call it in the business world, it's a missed opportunity. And you never know what magic can just come up out of an idea in a group of people.
Thank you, Nicoletta. Execute, test out, reach out to people, and work it. Amange?
I think my advice would be around just really, for myself, I think it would have been really helpful if I had been recording and measuring everything as I've been going along. So everything that you do, just make sure that it's keep track of it somehow. And I think that's sort of a space that we're working on now. Just looking at how to really measure sort of our impact and how to really track that. So I think if my advice to anybody, you know, sort of starting an initiative, starting a project, it's great to do the work, but I think it's really, really great to record it in some way, whether it's video, whether it's on paper, I don't know, but just make sure that you have sort of a measure of what you've done and you can know how to move forward.
Well taken. Keep documenting all that you're doing at all times. Thank you. Finally, but not the least, James Okina.
I would have told me what you're doing is the future of the world. I would have wanted to increase the confidence in what I was doing. And that's basically what Allah said to me.
All right, and we have finally come to a very wonderful, not a sad ending, but just a very wonderful conclusion to this amazing topic of how to turn your ideas into reality. And to get back from what everyone said, Nicoletta from Romania has explained that, you know, to turn your ideas into a reality, and another advice you give to herself 3 years ago would have been to execute, to test out, to reach out to people, and to just, you know, whether she's afraid or not, just work on those ideas that you have. Monge's is more or less measuring what matters and keeping on documenting everything you've gone through so that you can, you know, go when you're at the future time, you could look back and say, oh, this is what what went wrong, what went right, this is what I can do better. And James is more like stay confident in everything you're doing and bring out your best self. So really want to say thank you so much, whether you're joining us from Facebook or you're part of the CFC community who joined us here live. Thank you so much. And to every single person who asked their questions, thank you. If we couldn't answer your questions, please feel free to reach out to Amonge, Nicoletta, James on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Just Google them, you'll find them. And you'll find their social media handles there as well. And also thanks so much to this CFC team, those at the back end, Yusuf, Leah, Gemma, even Ben, every other person there. Thank you so much for joining us. And let's also not forget that we have another live session tomorrow featuring, it's a career chat featuring Nixie, Noni Dube, sorry, featuring Noni Dube and James Nixie tomorrow, Thursday at 1700 UK time. And please also be there. And also thank you so much to all our amazing panelists. It was really super wonderful listening to you all today. Thank you so much. And I look forward to connecting with you. And please, everyone, don't forget to connect with them. Like Nicoletta said, networking is really super powerful. So feel free to network with them. LinkedIn, introduce yourself. Hi, I'm my name, and I'd like to connect with you beyond here. So thank you so much for joining us today. Have an awesome August.